Lisa Morgan stood in the great chamber of the Galactic Council Station and watched the alien delegates argue about trade routes and border disputes and 1,000 other matters that seemed small compared to what was coming. She wore her diplomatic uniform with its crisp lines and polished insignia, but beneath the professional exterior her muscles were tense and ready. Beside her sat Ember, and the great dragon creature stretched lazily across the marble floor. The Drakari had scales that shimmered between deep crimson and gold, and eyes that glowed like molten copper. Ember was nearly 8 feet tall at the shoulder when standing, and their telepathic voice often whispered in Lisa's mind with observations and warnings. The council chamber was massive and circular, with seats arranged in ascending rings like an ancient amphitheater. Representatives from hundreds of worlds sat in those seats, and each was stranger than the last. Chancellor Thoros of the Vrex people occupied the highest seat, and his reptilian face showed no emotion as he presided over the session. His scales were dark green, and his yellow eyes swept across the chamber with cold calculation. Beside him sat Hive Queen Zarakith, and her insect body clicked and chittered as she communicated with her attendants. Lisa had been on the council station for 3 months now, and every day felt like walking through a minefield. The other delegates watched humans with barely concealed suspicion. 50 years ago, Earth had fought a brief but devastating war against the Kalari Empire, and the human victory had shocked the galaxy. Since then, the Council had granted Earth limited membership, but with strict rules. Humans could not expand beyond their current colonies, and they could not build certain types of weapons, and they had to accept Council observers in their military facilities. Lisa hated it, but she played the diplomatic game because it was better than war. At least that was what she told herself. Her communicator buzzed softly against her wrist, and she glanced down at the message. It was from Kate Sullivan, her second-in-command, back at the human embassy. The message was brief and coded, but Lisa understood it immediately. Something was wrong on New Haven. New Haven was the newest human colony world, and it was home to 15,000 people, including Lisa's. 7-year-old daughter Sophie Lisa felt her heart rate increase, but she kept her face neutral. She had learned long ago how to hide her emotions from hostile observers. Ember sensed her distress through their bond, and the dragon lifted their great head. Their mental voice touched her mind with concern, and Lisa sent back a silent reassurance, even though she felt anything but reassured. She needed to leave the chamber and contact Kate, but the session was still in progress, and walking out would be noticed. Chancellor Thoros was speaking about human compliance with council regulations, and his tone suggested he was building towards something. Lisa forced herself to focus on his words. The Chancellor talked about how humans had been cooperative in recent months, and how this was good for galactic stability. Then he mentioned that Council security forces were conducting routine patrols near human space, and that humans should not be concerned about this increased presence. Lisa's instincts screamed at her. Routine patrols near human space were not routine at all. The Council had never shown interest in that region before. Ember shifted beside her, and smoke curled from their nostrils. Several nearby delegates moved their seats slightly away. Lisa placed a hand on Ember's shoulder and felt the heat radiating through the scales. The dragon was picking up on her anxiety and responding to it. She needed to get out of this chamber now. Lisa stood, and several hundred alien eyes turned toward her. She bowed slightly to Chancellor Thoros and requested permission to be excused for an urgent matter. The Chancellor stared at her for a long moment. His face was unreadable, but Lisa saw something flicker in his eyes. Knowledge, perhaps, or satisfaction. He granted her request with a dismissive wave. Lisa left the chamber with Ember following close behind, and their claws clicked on the polished floor. As soon as they were in the corridor, Lisa broke into a run. The human embassy was on the lower levels of the station, and she took a transport lift that dropped them through the massive structure at dizzying speed. Kate was waiting for her in the secure communications room. The younger woman looked pale, and her hands shook as she pulled up the data on the main screen. New Haven Colony was under attack. The visuals showed explosions in the main settlement and people running through streets filled with smoke and debris. Communications were being jammed and only fragments of messages were getting through. Lisa scanned the reports with growing horror. The attackers were using advanced weapons and coordinated tactics. They had struck the colony defense grid first and disabled it within minutes. Then they had hit the communication arrays. Now ground forces were moving through the settlement, and they were herding people toward the central plaza. Kate had managed to decrypt one partial message from the colony's security chief. The message mentioned unknown soldiers in black armor and energy weapons that cut through standard shields like paper. It also mentioned that they were taking children. Lisa felt something cold settle in her chest. Sophie had been at the education center that morning. The education center was in the Eastern District near the Central Plaza. She pulled up the last location data from Sophie's personal tracker. The signal had gone dead 2 hours ago, right at the education center. Lisa tried to contact the colony directly, but got only static. She tried emergency channels and got the same result. Someone had completely cut off New Haven from the rest of human space. Ember growled deep in their chest, and Lisa felt the dragon's rage mixing with her own through their bond. She turned to Kate and ordered her to contact Earth Command immediately. They needed military response, and they needed it now. Kate worked frantically at the console, but then shook her head. Council security protocols were blocking their long-range transmissions. They could only communicate within the station itself. Lisa felt the diplomatic mask she had worn for months beginning to crack. She left the embassy and went straight to the council security office with Ember at her side. The security chief was a tall insectoid named Vrak, and he listened to her report with apparent concern. Then he explained that council forces could not intervene in what appeared to be an internal human matter without proper authorization. Lisa pointed out that New Haven was being attacked by unknown forces with technology far beyond what any human faction possessed. Vrak replied that the council needed to investigate before committing resources. He suggested that Lisa file a formal request and that the council would consider it at the next session in 3 days. 3 days. Sophie could be dead in 3 days. Lisa tried to keep her voice calm as she explained the urgency. Vrak remained unmoved. He cited regulations and protocols and jurisdictional boundaries. Ember snarled and flames licked around their jaws. Vrak backed away and called for his guards. Lisa pulled Ember back before the situation escalated. They returned to the embassy, and Lisa immediately began planning. If the council would not help, then she would go herself. She ordered Kate to prepare the fastest ship in their small fleet. Kate hesitated and pointed out that leaving the station without authorization would violate their diplomatic immunity. Lisa looked at her second in command, and Kate saw something in her eyes that made her take a step back. Lisa told her to prep the ship. While Kate worked, Lisa accessed the embassy intelligence files. She had been collecting data on council military movements for months as part of her duties. Now she looked at that data with new eyes. There were anomalies. Council ships had been moving toward human space for the past week. Energy signatures matching those movements appeared in the fragmentary reports from New Haven. Lisa felt her blood run cold. The council was behind the attack, or at least some faction within the council was. She pulled up more files and found references to old debates about the human question. Some council members had argued that humans were too dangerous to allow free expansion. They had worried about human adaptability and human bonding with other species, especially the Drakari. There were ancient texts that mentioned firebinders and their dragon companions, prophecies about beings who could challenge the old galactic order. Lisa had dismissed it as superstitious nonsense when she first read it. Now she wondered if someone on the council took those prophecies seriously. Ember pressed close against her, and their mental voice was full of fury and determination. The dragon wanted blood. Lisa wanted the same. But she needed information first. She accessed the station's surveillance systems using codes that Kate had quietly obtained over the past months. The feeds showed her something that confirmed her worst fears. Chancellor Thoros was meeting with several other council members in a private chamber. Their conversation was encrypted, but their body language spoke volumes. They were pleased about something. One of them gestured toward a star map, and Lisa recognized the region. It was human space. Kate returned and reported that the ship was ready. Lisa gathered a few essential items, including weapons from the embassy's secure armory. She also sent an encrypted message to Earth Command using a hidden communication channel that bypassed Council security. The message was simple. New Haven was under attack, and the Council was involved, and Lisa was going to get her daughter back. As she prepared to leave, a message came through on her personal communicator. It was from an unknown source. The message contained coordinates and a single line of text. The text said that Sophie was alive and being held at a specific facility. It also warned that Council forces would stop Lisa if they knew she was coming. Lisa looked at the coordinates. They were nowhere near New Haven. They were in a restricted sector that the Council used for military research. Ember rumbled, and Lisa felt the dragon's certainty through their bond. This was a trap, but it was also the only lead they had. Lisa made her decision. She would go to those coordinates, and if it was a trap, then she would spring it. Anyone who stood between her and Sophie would learn what human fury truly meant. She walked toward the docking bay with Ember beside her, and Kate followed with 3 other loyal embassy staff. Amy Chen was their best pilot, and Nicole Harris was an engineer who could make miracles happen with broken equipment. Laura Bennett was a combat medic who had saved lives on a dozen worlds. They were a small team, but Lisa trusted them with her life. As they boarded the ship, Lisa felt the last remnants of her diplomatic persona fall away. She was no longer Commander Morgan, the patient negotiator. She was Lisa Morgan, former Special Forces operative and mother. The Galactic Council had made a terrible mistake. They thought human anger could be contained by treaties and protocols. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The ship called Spectre's Edge cut through space at maximum speed, and Lisa stood on the bridge watching the stars streak past. Amy Chen sat at the controls, and her hands moved across the console with practiced ease. Nicole Harris worked at the engineering station, and she was pushing the engines beyond their normal limits. Laura Bennett monitored the sensor arrays and watched for pursuit. Ember lay coiled near Lisa's feet, and the dragon was unusually quiet. Their mental bond carried waves of anticipation and barely controlled rage. Lisa understood the feeling. She kept seeing Sophie's face in her mind and imagining all the terrible things that might be happening to her daughter. The coordinates from the mysterious message led them toward the Zerath system. It was a dead region of space, with no inhabited worlds and no reason for anyone to go there. Except the Council had a facility there. Kate had found references to it in classified files. The facility was listed as a research station, but there were no details about what kind of research Lisa suspected she knew. The Council had been studying humans for years and trying to understand what made them so dangerous. They probably wanted to study human children, too. The thought made her hands clench into fists. Ember raised their head and sent a wave of reassurance through the bond. The dragon reminded her that rage without focus was useless. Lisa took a deep breath and forced herself to think tactically. She gathered her small team and laid out what they knew. The facility on Zerath was heavily defended according to the sensor data they had pulled. It had orbital platforms and shield generators and automated defenses. A direct assault would be suicide. They needed another approach. Nicole suggested using Ember's unique abilities. The dragon could phase through solid matter for short distances and could withstand extreme temperatures. The Zarath moon was volcanic and still geologically active. If they could get close enough, Ember might be able to enter through the volcanic vents. Lisa considered it. The plan was risky, but possible. Amy could bring them in fast and low, using the moon's magnetic interference to mask their approach. Nicole would handle the shields and weapons. Laura would stay with the ship and be ready for emergency extraction. Kate would coordinate with Earth Command and try to get reinforcements. Lisa and Ember would go in alone. The team agreed, and they began preparations. As they worked, Kate pulled Lisa aside. She had been analyzing the data from New Haven and had found something disturbing. The attack patterns matched Council military doctrine. The weapons signatures matched Council prototype systems. But more than that, Kate had found communication intercepts. The attackers had been coordinating with someone on the Council station, someone high up in the command structure. Lisa asked who. Kate showed her the data. The communication traces led back to Chancellor Thoros himself. Lisa felt something cold and hard settle in her chest. The leader of the Galactic Council had ordered an attack on human children. The question was why. Kate had a theory. She pulled up the old prophecy texts that Lisa had seen before. The texts spoke of firebinders who would bond with ancient dragons and bring change to the galaxy. They spoke of a power that could challenge the old order. The Council had dismissed these prophecies as myth. But what if someone believed they were real? What if someone feared that human children bonding with Drakari would create something unstoppable? Sophie had been showing signs of telepathic ability lately. Lisa had thought it was just normal childhood imagination. But what if it was more? What if Sophie was beginning to bond with a Drakari? The young dragons on Pyraxis were rare and valuable. The Council controlled access to them. But there were rumors of wild Drakari still living in remote regions. If Sophie had somehow connected with one, Lisa shook her head. It did not matter right now. All that mattered was getting Sophie back. The ship approached Zarath, and Amy brought them in exactly as planned. They skimmed low over the volcanic surface and used the heat and magnetic interference to hide from the facility's sensors. Lisa could see the research station through the view screen. It was built into the side of a massive crater and protected by multiple layers of shields. Ember stood and stretched, and their scales began to glow with inner fire. Lisa checked her weapons and armor. She carried a plasma rifle and a particle blade and several other tools that Nicole had modified for maximum damage. She also carried a small device that would send a signal to the ship when she needed extraction. The plan was simple. Get in and find Sophie and get out. If anyone tried to stop them, Ember would burn them. If the facility tried to lock them in, Lisa would blast through the walls. She was done being diplomatic. Amy found a landing spot near a volcanic vent and brought the ship down. The temperature outside was high enough to melt most metals, but Ember could handle it easily. Lisa wore a heat-resistant suit that Nicole had enhanced. They left the ship and moved toward the vent. The ground shook beneath their feet as the moon groaned and shifted. Lava flows glowed in the distance, and the air shimmered with heat. Ember dove into the volcanic vent without hesitation. Lisa followed and trusted the dragon to guide her. They descended through twisting tunnels of rock, and the temperature climbed even higher. Lisa's suit strained to keep up with the cooling requirements, but Ember seemed to grow stronger in the heat. Their scales glowed brighter, and their mental voice was filled with fierce joy. Dragons were born from fire, after all. They emerged inside the facility through a maintenance access point. Alarms began blaring. Immediately, Lisa had expected that. She raised her rifle and moved forward. The first security team rounded the corner, and Lisa fired without hesitation. Her shots were precise and efficient. Years of combat training took over. Ember followed and burned through a reinforced door with plasma breath. They moved deeper into the facility and left a trail of destruction behind them. Lisa accessed a computer terminal and pulled up the facility layout. The holding cells were on the lower levels. She also found something else. The facility was not just holding human children, it was studying them. Medical reports, detailed experiments on human telepathic potential, genetic analysis looked for markers that indicated bonding ability. There were over 20 human children in the facility. All of them had been taken from New Haven. Lisa felt her rage burn hotter. These were not soldiers or combatants. These were innocent children, and the council had been experimenting on them. Ember roared and the sound echoed through the corridors. More security teams appeared and Lisa fought through them with mechanical efficiency. She was not thinking anymore. She was just moving and shooting and clearing a path. Ember provided cover and their telepathic awareness warned her of flanking attacks. They reached the holding area and Lisa blasted the door controls. Inside, she found rows of cells with energy barriers, and in one of those cells, she saw Sophie. Her daughter looked small and scared, but unhurt. Sophie saw Lisa and her face lit up with hope and relief. Lisa ran to the cell and started working on the barrier controls. Sophie told her that the scientists had been asking her questions about dreams of flying and breathing fire, dreams of a young dragon named Starfire. Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. Sophie was bonding with a Drakari. The prophecies were real. Before she could process this, a new alarm sounded. Heavy footsteps echoed in the corridor. Chancellor Thoros appeared with a squad of elite guards. His reptilian face showed satisfaction. He told Lisa that she had done exactly what he expected, that she had confirmed everything he suspected about human emotional responses, that she was proving that humans were too dangerous to leave unchecked. Lisa stood between the Chancellor and her daughter. She told him that he had made a mistake, that attacking children was an act of war. Thoros laughed. He said that Earth could not win a war against the entire Council, that humanity would submit or be destroyed, that the children would be used as leverage to force compliance. Lisa felt something inside her snap. The last restraints on her fury broke apart. She raised her rifle, but the Chancellor's guards were faster. Energy bolts filled the air. Ember threw up a shield and deflected most of the shots. Lisa returned fire and dropped 2 guards. But more were coming. The Chancellor retreated and sealed the corridor behind him. Lisa turned back to Sophie's cell and worked frantically on the controls Nicole had taught her how to bypass Council security systems. The barrier flickered and died. Sophie ran into her mother's arms. Lisa held her daughter close and felt tears on her face, but there was no time for reunion. They needed to escape. Ember told her through their bond that something was happening. Sophie was glowing with a faint golden light, and in the cell next to hers, a small dragon creature was stirring. Starfire was no bigger than a large dog. Their scales were silver and blue, and their eyes were fixed on Sophie with absolute devotion. The young Drakari had been captured along with the children. Lisa made a decision. She freed all the children and all the Drakari in the holding area. 23 children. And 7 young dragons. They would all escape together or not at all. Amy received the signal and brought the ship around, but Council reinforcements were arriving. 3 warships dropped out of hyperspace. Nicole worked frantically to keep the ship's shields operational. Laura prepared the medical bay for wounded Kate, sent urgent messages to Earth Command. Lisa led the children through the facility and back toward the volcanic vents. Ember and the young Drakari formed a protective circle around the group. The facility security tried to stop them, but Lisa cut through them like a storm. She had become something beyond a soldier. She was a mother defending her young, and nothing in the galaxy could stand against that. They reached the vents and began the climb back to the surface. The children were scared, but the Drakari helped them. The dragons could shield them from the heat and guide them through the tunnels. Lisa carried Sophie and Starfire flew beside them. When they emerged, the ship was under heavy fire. Council warships were pounding it with energy. Weapons Amy was flying evasive maneuvers and barely keeping ahead of the blasts. Nicole screamed at Lisa to hurry. They ran across the volcanic surface and toward the ship. Energy bolts exploded around them. Ember threw up shields, but they could not protect everyone. One of the children stumbled and fell. Lisa went back and grabbed the boy. An energy bolt hit near them, and she felt the heat wash over her armor. Then they were at the ship and piling inside. Amy launched before the door fully closed. The ship accelerated hard, and everyone was thrown against the walls. Council warships pursued, and their weapons tore. Through space, Nicole diverted all power to engines and shields. The ship shook with each impact. Lisa strapped Sophie and the other children into safety harnesses. The young Drakari huddled together, and their telepathic voices filled the ship with fear and determination. Amy pushed the engines past Redline. The ship screamed toward the hyperspace threshold. Just a few more seconds, a Council warship moved to intercept. Its main cannon was charging. Lisa could see the energy building in the weapon. Then Ember did something unexpected. The dragon opened their jaws and released a pulse of telepathic energy. The pulse hit the Council warship, and every system aboard shut down. The ship went dark and drifted. Lisa stared at Ember in shock. She had not known the dragon could do that. Ember looked tired but satisfied. They jumped to hyperspace and left the Council forces behind. In the safety of faster-than-light travel, Lisa finally let herself breathe. Sophie was safe. The other children were safe. They had escaped. But Lisa knew this was only the beginning. She had attacked a Council facility and freed prisoners and destroyed Council property. She had declared war on the most powerful organization in the galaxy, and she did not care. They had taken her daughter. They had experimented on children. They had betrayed every principle of civilization. Now they would face the consequences. Lisa looked at Sophie and saw her daughter smiling. Despite everything, Starfire curled up in Sophie's lap and purred. The other children were talking quietly with their bonded Drakari. Something new was being born here. Something the Council feared. And Lisa would protect it with every breath. In her body. The galaxy would learn what happened when you threatened a human mother. They would learn about fury. The ship dropped out of hyperspace near an abandoned mining station in the outer rim, and Lisa knew they needed supplies and repairs before they could continue. Nicole reported that the engines were damaged and the shields were operating at 40% capacity. Laura was treating minor injuries among the children, but everyone was physically intact. Mentally was another matter. Lisa watched the children huddled together with their bonded Drakari, and she saw the trauma in their eyes. They had been taken from their homes and experimented on and imprisoned. Some of them had parents who were still on New Haven. Some of them were orphans now. Sophie sat close to Lisa, and Starfire never left her side. The young dragon was remarkably calm for one so small. Their silver-blue scales shimmered in the ship's dim lighting, and their eyes showed intelligence far beyond their apparent age. Lisa asked Sophie what happened on New Haven. Her daughter explained that soldiers in black armor had come to the education center. They had used some kind of stunning weapon that made everyone fall asleep. When Sophie woke up, she was in a cell on the research station. The scientists had asked her questions about her dreams and about feeling connected to something beyond herself. Sophie had not understood at first. Then Starfire had been brought to her cell. The moment their eyes met, something had clicked into place. Sophie described it as feeling complete for the first time, like finding a part of herself she had not known was missing. Ember listened to this and sent waves of understanding through their bond with Lisa. The dragon explained that bonding between humans and Drakari was ancient, that it had happened long ago before the Council existed, that the old texts spoke of firebinders who had changed the course of civilizations. But over time, the bonds had become rare. The Drakari had withdrawn to their homeworld and limited contact with other species. The Council had encouraged this isolation. Now Lisa understood why bonded pairs were powerful, more than the sum of their parts. The Council feared that power. Kate interrupted with urgent news. Earth Command had received Lisa's message and was mobilizing forces, but the Council had declared Lisa and her team renegades. They claimed that Lisa had attacked a peaceful research facility and kidnapped council personnel. The propaganda was already spreading across galactic networks. Humans were being painted as violent and unstable. Chancellor Thoros was calling for economic sanctions against Earth. He was demanding that Lisa be turned over for trial. Lisa laughed bitterly. She had expected this. The council would never admit what they had done. They would twist the narrative and make themselves the victims. Amy suggested they run, find a remote system and disappear. Start new lives somewhere. The council could not reach Lisa considered it for exactly 3 seconds. Then she rejected the idea. Running would accomplish nothing. The council would continue their experiments. They would hunt down other bonded pairs. They would spread fear about humans until the galaxy turned against Earth completely. No, running was not an option. They needed to fight back. But fighting the entire Galactic Council seemed impossible. Lisa had a small ship and 4 crew members and 23 traumatized children. Against that, the Council had thousands of warships and millions of soldiers. Nicole pointed out that they had something the Council did not understand. They had bonded Drakari pairs, 7 young dragons and their human partners, plus Lisa and Ember. That was 8 bonded pairs with abilities the Council had never seen in action. It was not much, but it was a start. Lisa made a decision. They would strike at Council facilities. They would free any prisoners they found. They would expose the truth about what the Council was doing, and they would make it impossible for the galaxy to ignore. Kate warned that this would make them outlaws. Lisa pointed out that they were already outlaws. They might as well earn the title. The team set to work. Nicole repaired the ship using parts salvaged from the mining station. Amy plotted jump coordinates to the nearest Council military depot. Laura worked with the children and helped them understand their new bonds. Kate began spreading information through underground networks. She leaked evidence of the Council's experiments. She shared testimony from the freed children. She exposed the connection between Chancellor Thoros and the attack on New Haven. The information spread slowly at first. Then it began to gain momentum. Some species who had suffered under Council oppression started paying attention. Independent journalists began asking questions. Not everyone in the Council supported what Thoros had done. Lisa received a message from an unexpected source. It was from Hera, the crystalline delegate from Lumina. 7. Hera had always been neutral in Council matters, but the message contained encrypted files that showed the full extent of the conspiracy. Thoros had not acted alone. A faction within the Council had been planning this for years. They feared that human Drakari bonds would upset the balance of power. They believed that bonded pairs could challenge Council authority. So they had decided to eliminate the threat before it fully emerged. The files included orders to attack other human colonies. New Haven had been just the beginning. Lisa felt her blood run cold. There were 12 human colonies scattered across space. Hundreds of thousands of people. The Council planned to destroy them all. She could not let that happen. The ship arrived at the Council depot, and Lisa put her plan into action. The depot was lightly defended. It held supplies and equipment, but minimal security. Lisa and Ember attacked at dawn. The dragon phased through the outer wall while Lisa cut through the main gate. The surprise guards never had a chance. Within minutes, Lisa had control of the depot. She found weapons and armor and ships. She also found something unexpected: prisoners. The Council was holding dissidents and rebels from a dozen different species, people who had spoken out against Council policies, people who had questioned Council authority. Lisa freed them all. She offered them a choice: join her fight or take a ship and disappear. Most chose to join. They were angry and they wanted revenge. Lisa suddenly had an army, small and poorly trained but motivated. She armed them with Council weapons and gave them Council ships. Then she did something that shocked everyone. She broadcast a message to the entire galaxy. In the message, Lisa stood with Sophie and Starfire beside her, Ember loomed behind them with flames dancing around their jaws. Lisa spoke clearly and calmly. She explained what the council had done. She showed evidence of the experiments on children. She revealed the plot to destroy human colonies. She challenged Chancellor Thoros to deny it. Then she made a promise. She would hunt down every council facility involved in the conspiracy. She would free every prisoner. She would expose every crime, and she would not stop until justice was served. The message ended with a warning. Anyone who harmed human children would face her wrath. Anyone who stood with the council conspiracy would be considered an enemy. But anyone who sought peace and justice was welcome to join her cause. The galaxy erupted in response. Some called Lisa a terrorist. Some called her a hero. The council issued bounties and sent warships to hunt her. But Lisa was already gone. She struck at 3 more facilities in rapid succession. Each time she freed prisoners and gathered allies. Each time she exposed more evidence of council crimes, the young bonded pairs proved invaluable. Sophie and Starfire could sense danger before it arrived. Other children had different gifts. One boy named Peter could communicate with machines through his dragon. A girl named Claire could create illusions that fooled sensors. They were learning and growing stronger with each battle. Ember taught the young Drakari ancient techniques, ways to use their fire and their telepathy, ways to protect their bonded humans. The dragons learned quickly. Lisa refined her tactics with each engagement. She used hit-and-run attacks. She struck where the council was weak and vanished before reinforcements arrived. She turned their own weapons against them. Nicole became a master of sabotage. She could disable council ships with a few well-placed modifications. Amy flew like a demon possessed. She could navigate asteroid fields and gravity wells that would destroy normal pilots. Laura saved lives that should have been lost. She combined human medicine with techniques learned from alien species. Kate coordinated everything from behind the scenes. She managed their growing network of allies. She spread information faster than the council could suppress it. The rebellion grew. Other species joined the cause. The Lumari sent ships. The Tarkesh sent warriors. Even some Vrex defected from their own people and joined Lisa. They were tired of Chancellor Thoros and his cruelty. Within 2 months, Lisa commanded a fleet of 30 ships. It was nothing compared to the Council's thousands, but it was enough to make them nervous. Chancellor Thoros appeared in broadcasts and condemned the terrorists. He sent elite forces to hunt them down, but Lisa always stayed one step ahead. She had something the council lacked. She had people fighting for a cause they believed in. The council soldiers fought for pay and orders. Lisa's people fought for freedom and justice. There was a difference. Sophie asked her mother one night if they were winning. Lisa held her daughter close and considered the question. They were not winning. In the traditional sense, they were outnumbered and outgunned, but they were making progress. The galaxy was waking up to the truth. More species were questioning the council. More worlds were refusing to cooperate with Thoros. That was a kind of victory. Lisa told Sophie that they were fighting the good fight, that sometimes that was all you could do. Sophie seemed satisfied with that answer. Starfire purred and curled up beside them. Ember watched over them all with protective vigilance. In the quiet moments, Lisa thought about the cost she had left her diplomatic career behind. She had become an outlaw and a rebel. She had put her daughter in constant danger. But when she looked at Sophie and saw the strength in her daughter's eyes, when she saw the bond between Sophie and Starfire growing deeper each day, she knew she had made the right choice. The Council had tried to destroy something beautiful. The bond between humans and Drakari was not a threat. It was a gift. Lisa would protect that gift, no matter what it cost. The galaxy would learn that a mother's fury was not something to be contained. It was a force of nature, unstoppable, unbreakable, eternal. And anyone who threatened her child would burn. Lisa's fleet hung in space near the Dark Star Nebula, and she studied the tactical display with calculating eyes. Intelligence reports indicated that the Council was moving major forces toward human space. 3 battle groups with over 200 warships. Their destination was clear Earth itself. Chancellor Thoros was done playing games. He intended to crush humanity once and for all. Lisa had to stop him. But first, she needed more information. Kate had traced the Council's command structure and found something disturbing. The conspiracy went deeper than anyone suspected. Nearly half the Council members were involved in the plot against humanity. They had been planning this for decades, waiting for the right moment to strike. The appearance of bonded pairs had triggered their timeline. Now they were committed to total war. Lisa called a meeting with her senior officers. Amy and Nicole and Laura gathered around the holographic display. Several alien allies joined them, including a Lumari captain named Vex and a Tarkesh warrior named Gron. They discussed options, and none of them were good. Attacking the Council fleet directly would be suicide. Their 30 ships could not stand against 200. But if they did nothing, Earth would fall. Nicole suggested a different approach. Instead of fighting the fleet, they should strike at its supply lines. The Council fleet needed fuel and ammunition and replacement parts. Those supplies came from specific depot worlds. If they destroyed those depots, the fleet would be crippled. Lisa considered it. The plan had merit, but it would require splitting their forces. They would need to hit multiple targets simultaneously, and they would be vulnerable to counterattack. Vex pointed out that they had allies across the galaxy, now species who had suffered under Council oppression, species who were ready to fight. If Lisa called for help, she would get it. Gron agreed. The Tarkesh had been waiting for someone to stand up to the Council. Many would join if given the chance. Lisa made the decision. She would send out the call. She would rally every species that wanted freedom from Council tyranny, and she would hit the Council so hard they would never recover. The message went out through encrypted channels. Within hours, responses began flooding in. Ships appeared from across the galaxy. Some were military vessels, some were converted freighters, some were barely spaceworthy, but they came hundreds of them. Lisa suddenly commanded a fleet of over 400 ships. It was still smaller than the Council's combined forces, but it was enough to make a difference. She divided the fleet into strike groups. Each group would hit a different target: supply depots, and communication relays, and sensor arrays. The goal was to blind the Council and starve their fleet. Lisa would lead the main assault on the primary supply depot at Tartarus Deep. Tartarus Deep was a fortress world. It had been the Council's main military base for centuries, heavily defended with orbital platforms and ground installations, 10,000 soldiers, and enough firepower to destroy an armada. Most commanders would avoid it. Lisa was going to hit it head-on, because Tartarus Deep held something else. According to Harris intelligence files, the Council was keeping more prisoners there. More human children who had shown signs of bonding potential, more young Drakari who had been captured. Lisa would not leave them behind. Sophie insisted on coming with her. The girl was only 7, but she had become remarkably capable. Her bond with Starfire gave her abilities that even Lisa did not fully understand. The pair could sense danger and communicate across vast distances. They could shield themselves from attacks and heal minor wounds. Sophie was more than just a child now. She was a warrior in her own right. Lisa did not like it, but she understood the children with bonded Drakari were not helpless victims anymore. They were becoming something new, something powerful. The strike force assembled near Tartarus. Deep 50 ships, including the Spectre's Edge. Lisa stood on the bridge and watched the fortress world grow larger on the view screen. Ember sat beside her, and the dragon radiated deadly calm. Sophie and Starfire were in the tactical station helping to coordinate the attack. Amy had her hands on the controls, ready to dive into the chaos. Nicole had every weapon system charged and ready. Laura had the medical bay prepared for casualties. Kate was managing communications and trying to keep the fleet coordinated. The attack began with a feint. Half the ships moved toward the northern hemisphere, the Council's defense platforms oriented toward the threat. Then the real assault came from the south. Lisa's ships poured fire into the orbital defenses. Shields flared and died. Platforms exploded in silent fury. The Council scrambled to respond. Their warships moved to intercept. But Amy brought the Spectre's edge in fast and low. They skimmed the planet's atmosphere and used the gravity well to accelerate. The Council ships could not match their speed. Nicole fired the main guns and tore through a destroyer. Ember added plasma breath to the assault. The combined firepower punched through the Council's lines. They reached the surface and landed near the main installation. Lisa led a ground team into the fortress. 50 soldiers, including volunteers from a dozen species. The young bonded pairs formed the core of the assault. Sophie and Starfire moved with Lisa. Peter and his Dragon Forge handled electronic warfare. Claire and her Dragon Mist created illusions that confused the defenders. The Council soldiers fought back hard. Energy weapons lit up the corridors. Explosions shook the walls, but Lisa and her team pushed forward with relentless determination. Ember burned through reinforced doors. The young Drakari shielded their partners from incoming fire. Lisa moved like a force of nature. Years of combat training merged with a mother's desperate fury. She was unstoppable. They fought their way to the detention center. Lisa blasted the controls and the cell barriers dropped. Inside, she found 30 more children. 30 more young Drakari, all of them waiting to be rescued. The children recognized Sophie and ran to her. The dragons recognized Ember and bowed their heads in respect. Lisa ordered the evacuation. Laura began moving the children toward the extraction point, but alarms blared throughout the facility. Council reinforcements were arriving. Chancellor Thoros himself had come to Tartarus Deep. He wanted to capture Lisa personally. His elite guards flooded the facility. These were not regular soldiers. They were enhanced warriors with advanced armor and weapons. They had been trained specifically to fight bonded pairs. Lisa faced them in the main corridor. Thoros stood at the back of his forces. His reptilian face showed confidence. He told Lisa that her rebellion was over, that she had walked into a trap, that he would use her as an example to terrify the galaxy. Lisa looked at him with cold eyes. She had been playing diplomat for too long. She had forgotten what it felt like to truly unleash her fury. Now she remembered. She raised her rifle and fired. The battle that followed was brutal. Lisa's team fought against overwhelming numbers, but the bonded pairs were incredible. Sophie and Starfire moved as one being. The girl dodged attacks she could not possibly see. The dragon struck with precision that defied explanation. Peter hacked the facility systems and turned automated defenses against the Council. Claire created illusions of additional attackers and sowed chaos in the enemy ranks. The other children fought with their dragons. Young as they were, they had power. Ember demonstrated abilities that shocked even Lisa. The dragon could phase through solid matter, could create electromagnetic pulses that disabled technology, could project shields strong enough to stop anti-armor weapons. The young Drakari watched and learned. They began copying Ember's techniques. The fortress became a nightmare for the Council forces. Everywhere they turned, bonded pairs were tearing through their ranks. Lisa fought her way to Chancellor Thoros. His elite guards tried to stop her. She cut through them with mechanical efficiency. Ember incinerated anyone who got too close. Thoros backed away. For the first time, Lisa saw fear in his eyes. He had not believed the reports about bonded pairs. He had thought they were exaggerations. Now he understood, but understanding came too late. Lisa stood before him with her rifle aimed at his head. She told him that she could kill him right now, that she wanted to, that he deserved it for what he had done, but she would not, because she was better than him. Instead, she would drag him before the entire galaxy. She would make him confess his crimes. She would expose the conspiracy for all to see. Thoros laughed. He said that no one would believe her, that the Council controlled all the major news networks, that his version of events would be the official truth. Lisa smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. She told him that things had changed, that Kate had been busy. that the truth was already spreading faster than he could contain it. At that moment, broadcasts began appearing across every communication channel in the galaxy. Hera had provided access codes to the Council's own systems. Kate had used those codes to override every network simultaneously. The broadcasts showed everything: the experiments on children, the attack on New Haven, the orders to destroy human colonies, Thoros giving commands, council members discussing the conspiracy evidence that could not be denied or suppressed. The galaxy watched in horror. Species that had trusted the council felt betrayed. Worlds that had supported the council began withdrawing their backing. The carefully constructed lies fell apart. Thoros stared at the broadcasts, and his face went pale. His power was crumbling, his conspiracy was exposed, and Lisa had won. But she was not done yet. She dragged Thoros out of the fortress. His elite guards were dead or captured, his forces were in disarray. The orbital battle had turned in favor of Lisa's. Fleet Council ships were surrendering or fleeing Tartarus. Deep was falling. Lisa brought Thoros to her ship. She broadcast his capture to the galaxy. She announced that he would face justice. Real justice. Not the corrupt version that the Council had practiced for so long. The children were safe. The young Drakari were free. The conspiracy was broken, but the war was not over. There were still Council forces loyal to Thoros. Still worlds that supported the old order. Still those who feared change. Lisa knew that more fighting lay ahead, but she also knew that they had turned a corner. The galaxy would never be the same. The bond between humans and Drakari was no longer a secret. It was a reality that everyone had to accept, and those who tried to destroy it would face a mother's fury. Lisa looked at Sophie and saw her daughter smiling. Starfire purred contentedly. Ember radiated satisfaction through their bond. They had accomplished something impossible. A small group of rebels had challenged the mightiest power in the galaxy, and they had won. Not through superior force, but through courage and determination and the unbreakable bond between parent and child. Lisa knew that peace was still far away, that rebuilding would take years, that there would be setbacks and struggles, but for now, in this moment, she allowed herself to feel hope. The future was uncertain, but it was theirs to shape, and she would face it with her daughter by her side, with Ember watching over them, with friends and allies who believed in their cause. The Galactic Council had thought human anger could be contained. They had learned the truth. A mother's fury could not be stopped. It could only be survived, and those who threatened the innocent would always face its consequences. The Galactic Council station looked different now. Where once it had been a symbol of order and authority, it now stood as a reminder of corruption exposed. Lisa walked through the great chamber with Sophie by her side, and Ember following close behind. Starfire flew overhead, and the young dragon had grown considerably in the months since the rescue. All around them, delegates from hundreds of worlds watched with varying expressions. Some showed respect, some showed fear, some showed anger. Lisa did not care about any of it. She was here to finish what she had started. Chancellor Thoros sat in a containment field at the center of the chamber. His reptilian face showed no emotion, but his eyes revealed his defeat. Beside him were 15 other council members who had participated in the conspiracy. They would all face justice today. Hera now held the position of interim chancellor. The crystalline being had worked tirelessly to rebuild trust in the council. It was a difficult task. Many species wanted to leave the council entirely. Others demanded complete reform. Some called for the council to be dissolved. Earth had gained full membership and equal voting rights. The restrictions on human expansion had been lifted. Human colonies were being rebuilt with support from across the galaxy, but this was not about politics or power. This was about accountability. Hera called the session to order. She outlined the charges against Thoros and his conspirators, crimes against sentient beings, unauthorized military action, conspiracy to commit genocide, abuse of authority. The list went on. Evidence was presented. Testimony from survivors. Documents from the encrypted files, recordings of conversations, visual proof of the experiments. The galaxy watched as the full scope of the conspiracy was revealed. Thoros had planned to eliminate not just humans, but any species that showed bonding potential with Drakari. He had believed that such bonds threatened the existing power structure. He had been willing to commit mass murder to preserve that structure. The trial lasted 3 days. Delegates debated and argued. Some still defended Thoros, claiming he had acted to protect the galaxy. But the evidence was overwhelming. On the 4th day, Hera called for the vote, guilty or not guilty. The votes came in one by one. Species that had once supported the Council now condemned it. Worlds that had benefited from Council protection now demanded justice. When the final count was tallied, the result was clear. Guilty on all charges, Thoros and his co-conspirators would face imprisonment. Their authority was stripped. Their wealth was confiscated. They would spend the rest of their lives in isolation. It was not enough in Lisa's opinion. These beings had ordered the deaths of thousands. They had experimented on children. They deserved worse than comfortable imprisonment, but Lisa had promised to follow the law. She had fought for justice, not revenge. She would honor that promise. After the sentencing, Hera invited Lisa to address the council. Lisa stood before the assembled delegates and felt the weight of their attention. She thought about what to say, how to summarize everything that had happened, how to move forward. Sophie squeezed her hand, and Lisa felt strength flow through their connection. Ember sent waves of support through their mental bond. Lisa began to speak. She told the council that humanity had come to them seeking peace, that humans had followed every rule and restriction placed on them, that they had tried to be good galactic citizens. But the council had betrayed that trust. They had attacked innocent children. They had revealed that their authority was built on fear, not justice. Lisa said that humans could have responded with total war, that Earth had weapons capable of devastating entire worlds, that the human military could have burned the council to ash. But they had chosen a different path. They had fought for truth and accountability. They had sought to reform the system, not destroy it, because humans believed in justice, real justice, not the corrupt version that Thoros had practiced. Lisa warned the council that this was their one chance, that humanity would never again trust blindly, that any future betrayal would be met with overwhelming force. But she also offered hope. She spoke about the bonds between humans and Drakari, about what they represented, not a threat, but a bridge between species, a way to connect and understand each other on a deeper level. She told them that Sophie and the other children were not weapons. They were the future, a future where different species could truly work together, where power came not from domination, but from cooperation. Lisa finished by saying that the galaxy stood at a crossroads. They could learn from this tragedy and build something better, or they could repeat the mistakes of the past. The choice was theirs. The chamber was silent when she finished. Then Hera began to applaud, slowly at first. Then others joined in. Not all of them. Some delegates sat with arms crossed and faces hard, but enough responded positively that Lisa felt hope. After the session ended, Lisa and Sophie walked through the station. They visited the memorial that had been erected for the victims of New Haven. Thousands of names carved into crystal, each one representing a life lost, a family destroyed. Lisa placed flowers at the base of the memorial. Sophie did the same. They stood in silence for a long moment. Ember and Starfire waited patiently. Then a voice spoke, behind them. It was Vex, the Lumari captain who had fought alongside them. He had brought others, Amy and Nicole, and Laura and Kate grown, the Tarkesh warrior Peter and Claire, and the other bonded children, dozens of allies who had risked everything for this cause. They had all come to pay their respects. Together they remembered those who had been lost. Together, they celebrated those who had survived. It was not a perfect ending. Too many had died. Too much damage had been done. but it was an ending nonetheless. Lisa felt Sophie tugging at her sleeve. Her daughter pointed toward the observation deck. Through the massive windows, they could see space. And in that space, hundreds of ships were gathering human vessels and Lumari cruisers and Tarkesh frigates. Ships from species across the galaxy, all flying together, all working toward a common future. Sophie asked if it was really over. Lisa knelt down and hugged her daughter. She told Sophie that this chapter was over. But their story was just beginning. There would be new challenges, new threats, new adventures, but they would face them together, as a family, as bonded pairs, as friends and allies. Sophie seemed satisfied with that answer. Starfire chirped happily. Ember rumbled with contentment. Lisa stood and looked out at the assembled fleet. She thought about everything that had happened, the fear and pain and loss, but also the courage and hope and victory she had started as a diplomat trying to maintain peace. She had become a warrior fighting for justice. She had discovered that a mother's love was the strongest force in the universe. Nothing could stop it. Nothing could contain it. It burned brighter than any star, fiercer than any fire, and it would protect the innocent no matter the cost. The Galactic Council had learned that lesson the hard way. They had thought human anger could be controlled. They had been wrong. Human anger could be reasoned with, could be negotiated with, could be satisfied with justice, but a mother's fury, that was something else entirely. It was primal and unstoppable. It was the force that had shaped civilizations since the dawn of time. It was what made humans truly dangerous, not their weapons or their tactics, but their capacity to love and protect their children with absolute devotion. Lisa smiled as she watched the ships. The galaxy was changing. New alliances were forming. Old prejudices were being challenged. The bond between humans and Drakari was spreading. More children were discovering their potential. More young dragons were finding their partners. It was beautiful and terrifying and full of promise. Sophie would grow up in a very different galaxy than Lisa had known. One where humans were respected, not feared. Where different species worked together as equals, where the bonds of love and friendship transcended biology. Lisa could not predict what the future would hold. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. She would face it with her daughter, with Ember, with all the friends and allies who had fought beside her. And if anyone threatened them, if anyone tried to harm the children, if anyone repeated the mistakes of the past, they would learn what Lisa had taught the Council. They would witness a mother's fury, and they would burn. The end of this story was really just the beginning. A new chapter in Galactic history. Written not in the cold language of law and politics, but in the fierce heat of maternal love, and nothing in the universe could stand against that. Lisa took Sophie's hand, and they walked toward their ship. Tomorrow, they would return to Earth. They would rebuild their home. They would train the next generation of bonded pairs. They would work to ensure that what happened to New Haven never happened again. But today they would rest. They would remember those who had fallen. They would celebrate those who had survived. And they would look forward to the future. A future they had won through courage and sacrifice and unbreakable love. The Galactic Council had thought human anger was contained. They had learned better, but more importantly, they had learned about hope, about redemption, about the possibility of change, and about the simple truth that had been known since the beginning of time. Never threaten a mother's child, because a mother's fury knows no bounds, no limits, no mercy, only love. And love was the most powerful force in existence. Lisa and Sophie boarded their ship. Ember and Starfire followed the engines powered up, and they flew toward home, together, as they always would be forever.